Starting off this dark list, and at number 10 we have the secret farmhouse. A 25-year-old man escaped from a farmhouse and ran to the nearest public place, which happened to be a bar. He guzzled down 5 beers, and then he asked the bartender for help. He told him that he hasn't been outside for 9 years, and he's not the only one. Dutch police were called to the scene, where they found a secret staircase behind a cupboard that led them down to the basement. Inside this secret room, they found a man and his 6 children living inside of a small confined space. Some of these kids had no idea that the other people existed. They thought that they were the only ones left on Earth, and they were waiting for the world to end. But as it turns out, someone in their family was keeping them locked up in this secret farmhouse for 9 years. Is this real life right now? The police were unable to find their mother, and they suspect that she was either the one that did this or that she is dead somewhere. An unknown uncle in prison is at...
Moving on to number 9, we have What's on Your Mind. First off, shout out to the old hairstyles, glasses, and outfits. This must have been taken in the 70s. I mean, back then, this was probably a very cool artistic photo. But nowadays, it makes you wonder, why? Just why? Maybe it's symbolic, you know? Like, the father has got his family constantly on his mind. That's a sweet message. But it also almost looks like a funeral card. Coming in at number 8, we have Creepy Santa. What is going on with Santa in this picture? I guess this is a mask that the guy is wearing, but it's not jolly at all. No, he looks like a serial killer. No one should be brought near this Santa. He'll just scoop the kids in a bag and then take them off to hell or something. And that's probably why the kids look so frightened in the photo. They had to stand next to this creepy guy. Honestly, one look at this guy and I would have ran out of the room. Like, that's not Santa, that's my sleep paralysis demon. Seriously, where did they find this costume? The Halloween store? In our 7th spot, we have post-mortem photography. Back in the day, it was a trend for family members to take photos with their deceased relatives or loved ones. So photographers would prop the dead bodies up or display them so they kind of looked alive. And then family members would pose around them. This is what's happening in this photo. The individual on the floor sadly has passed away. Now what's creepy is that half of the family is smiling like nothing happened, whereas the other half look like they're in pain or just uncomfortable. Honestly, it's the fact that people are smiling around the dead body that creeps me out. Now, why did people do this back then? Well, for a number of reasons. First, it was a way to deal with their grief. Second, it helped preserve the image of the loved one that passed away. And third, it was like a little memento. This trend became common in Victorian England when there was a rise of short lifespans for the young, which is really sad. Moving on to number 6, we have these superheroes. So you know when you're growing up and you're all like, my mom and dad are my heroes. Well, this is certainly not what this kid meant by that. So I'm not gonna lie, the Superman and Wonder Woman costumes are actually really well done, minus the fact that Superman's logo is upside down. Hey, maybe he just didn't want to get copyrighted or something. But still, they look good. And then we have Spider-Man. You can tell by the expression on the kid's face that he is not comfortable with whatever is behind him, because that's not Spider-Man. More like, Spider-Man, this kid ain't going home, he's coming home with me. Also, smash that like button if you've seen the new Spider-Man movie. No spoilers, but let me know in the comments below if you liked it. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the inappropriate Christmas family photo. Take a look at this photo. How incredibly inappropriate and creepy. Like, you got the dad calling his 2 daughters hoes. I mean, it's a little funny, but it's very creepy. Like, whose idea was this? Also, what is that man doing with his wife's head? He's got like a claw hand on top of her. Is he trying to like hold her down? Also, no one in the photo looks like they're really enjoying this photo shoot. So I'll ask this again. Whose idea was this? I'd be mortified if I got this in the mail from any of my relatives. In our 4th spot, we have the ornaments. Whoever thought this next photo was a good idea needs to be fired. So this family went in for a cute Christmas photo shoot and then got edited as Christmas ornaments. Not gonna lie though, they all seem pretty happy, so maybe this is what they wanted. Like, it's kind of cute, but also they kind of look like Oompa Loompas. I bet this family looks back at this photo and they're like, what were we thinking? It's definitely coming back to haunt them. Like, people could use this photo as blackmail. I'm just kidding. It's not that bad compared to others on this list. It's more just like tacky than anything. Moving on to number 3, we have dad's legs. Whoever posed this family in the photo needs to be fired. They literally were like, okay, let's have you hugging your parents, and let's have the 2 oldest boys sitting cross-legged on the floor hugging their parents' legs. Yes, perfect, it looks great. Really captures their innocence. No, it's a little creepy, if you ask me. Like, the matching outfits are bad enough. The pose just pushes it over the top. It's actually hilarious. Like, look at the dad's Superman pose. He's so proud, like, yeah, this is my family. So regardless of the cringe factor, it kinda is cute. Just not a photo you should have framed and hanging in your home. Coming in at number 2, we have the, I honestly don't even know what to name this one. Just take a look. I don't know. They look like a lotus flower or something. Anyways, how the photographer managed to keep a straight face as the family stacked on top of each other and just spread their legs wide open is beyond me. But at the same time, it's impressive. Like, look how flexible they all are. Also, it's pretty trippy. Like, whose arms are whose? Whose legs are whose? It's a little mesmerizing, you know? Like, the longer you look at it, the more you get intrigued. But I bet that baby is haunted by this photo now. And in our number 1 spot today, we have What the Heck Is This? And I gave this point that name because when I saw the photos, I literally said, what the heck is this? So 4 years ago, Pam Zaring and her family got some photos done. They hired a photographer who claimed to be a professional, and she charged them $250 for a family photo shoot. And this is what they were given. Pam and her family actually found these photos so hilarious that she actually tweeted them out, and they went viral. She said, and I quote, "This is not a joke. We paid a photographer who claimed to be a professional $2 to $250 for a family photo shoot. Please see these for real photos she delivered to us." She said the shadows were really bad on the beautiful, clear, sunny day, and that her professor never taught her to retouch photos. Feel free to share. I literally have not laughed this hard in years. You can't make this stuff up. End of quote. Again, these photos were not a joke. They were the final product. And honestly, the shadows on the face were probably better than her removing their face completely and then making them look like aliens. Like, I can't believe the photographer really edited these and thought, perfect, much better. Yeah.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have The Roommate. Linda Chase is a woman who lived quite an isolated life and didn't really see or speak to many people aside from her longtime friend and roommate Charles Ziegler. In 2010, Charles, who was in his 60s, ended up passing away from natural causes. Definitely a sad situation, but as is the circle of life, but rather than calling the proper people after Charles' death, Linda did nothing. Well, she put him in a chair and kept him there for the next 18 months. Linda decided she wanted to live with a corpse. Apparently she enjoyed the company and would speak to his remains while she watched NASCAR. In the end, Linda was also cashing his social security checks, which is both suspicious and fraud, and I believe that's actually how she was found out and caught. She swears that she didn't keep the body just for the checks, but rather because she didn't want to be alone, and while that is terribly sad, the jury is still out on that one.
Number 9. This scary family secret comes from Reddit. Apparently this person had an uncle in prison, but no one in her family ever told her what he was serving time for. The family never talked about him, and if he was brought up in conversation, everyone would just simply change the topic. But one night, she was watching a TV documentary about horrific crimes that happened in Perth, Australia. And guess what? One of them was about David and Catherine Burney and how they brutally murdered a call girl. Well, as it turns out, this guy had the exact same name as her uncle in prison. Could this be the same guy? Could this be your uncle? Well, she turned to her mom, who said, "So I guess you could put the two to two together." Well, I guess that's one way to find out that you have an uncle who murdered someone. Not the best way of finding out, but yeah. The murderous couple is in at number 8. Gerald and Alice Uden appear to be the most wholesome couple. They regularly attended church and they seem to be super nice, genuine. They're very generous people. Well, don't be fooled by them because both of them were hiding their own deep, dark secret for decades. Apparently they were both married to other people they met before. Alice shot her husband in the head and then decided to hide his body in a gold mine. Whereas Gerald confessed to shooting his ex-wife and stepchildren with a rifle that she had bought him as a present. I mean, is this real life right now? What are the odds of these two people finding each other? Did they meet at a Killed My Spouse group meeting, or maybe they swiped right on the Kill Me app or I've Killed Before app? It's also crazy how many years went by before they were finally caught by the police. This story is absolutely insane. Next up on our list, at number 7, antifreeze. A mother and daughter confessed to poisoning members of their family with antifreeze. Let me give you guys a quick backstory. The father died without warning, so they attributed it to natural causes. Well, 5 months later, her autistic son died from what seemed to be seizure-related complications. And then the following year after that, her daughter needed emergency medical attention, and this is for an organ failure. Yeah, something about this just doesn't seem right. The family's pastor thought so too, so he reached out to local law enforcement who were able to get a confession out of her. And her motives were pretty messed up. She wanted her husband gone because of his temper, she couldn't deal with her autistic son, and her daughter racked up too much debt from college. So she had to go as well. She was gonna keep her other 2 daughters because she so loved them. But get this, the police found a diary belonging to her youngest daughter, and she wrote about how she helped her mother plan and execute the murders, and her goal was to eliminate the entire family until it was just her and her mother left. I mean, I can't even deal with this messed up family, so let's move on. The closet child comes in at number 6. For 3 years, a young boy was hidden inside of a locked closet while he was sedated by sleeping pills given to him by his mother. When neighbors asked Veronica Aguilar where her son was, she told them that he was placed in an institution in Mexico. But her 3 other children who slept on a bed just outside of the closet door knew the truth, but they were forbidden by their mother from saying anything to anyone. Sadly, this little boy's life came to an end when police finally discovered his malnourished body inside of the closet. It's insane because so many people like teachers, social workers, therapists, they all knew that he was a victim of abuse, but somehow they lost track of him, and because of their carelessness, his mother was able to lock him inside of a closet for a very long time until he ultimately passed away. Number 5, we have a crazy story about a girl who was raised by a man who killed her parents. Victoria Montenegro thought that her adoptive parents were kind and generous people who took her in after her real parents were killed in a shootout in Buenos Aires in 1976. Well, as it turns out, that was a complete lie. When she turned 24 years old, she discovered that the couple who raised her was part of the military regime responsible for her parents' disappearance. Her birth parents were actually abducted, abused, and assassinated by this group when she was only 4 months old. So her adoptive father took this opportunity to falsify her documents, hide her identity, and raise her as his own. This is just so messed up, so twisted. All of these years, she was being raised by a family that actually killed her parents and stole her identity. A serial killer in hiding brings us to number 4. Back in 1971, 13-year-old Charlie Brandt went into a full homicidal rampage. Without any warning, he shot his father in the back and then shot his pregnant mother while she was in the bath. He went to kill his other sister, but luckily his gun jammed. His father barely survived the shooting, but his mother wasn't so lucky. But because of his age, prosecutors never charged him with his mother's death. He was able to walk free and live a normal life. His family never brought up that night ever again, and he just went on as nothing ever happened. Well, in 2004, Brandt went on to brutally stab his wife 7 times in the chest, and he even decapitated her and ripped her heart out. Afterwards, he committed suicide. It's crazy because no one knew that he had serial killer tendencies except for his family, who kept his secret after all of these years. Now at number 3, dead bodies in the garage. Darren West spent 10 years of his life thinking that he only had 3 children with his ex-wife. But in 2006, this reality was shattered. He was serving time in prison for drug charges, but he was being released. While he was making arrangements to stay with his ex-wife, he came to the shocking truth. He found a dead baby in her garage, and it wasn't the only one. Between 1996 and 2006, Megan Huntsman had secretly given birth to 7 babies, and she choked them all to death. She turned her garage into a makeshift graveyard and kept this family's secret for years. As it turns out, she was addicted to meth, and that was her motive for killing these poor kids. I just can't believe that she was able to hide her pregnancy and murders this whole time. She probably would have taken this dark secret to her grave. The Turpin children makes its way onto this list at number 2. David and Louise Turpin managed to abuse their 13 children for years until one daughter was able to escape and tell the police. These poor kids were in such a controlling and abusive environment and had to do whatever it took to survive. In the media, their house was being called a house of horrors because some of the children were so far removed from the world. I mean, they didn't even know what medicine or the police were until they were finally rescued. They were only fed once a day and given a shower once a year. No one in the neighborhood had any idea what was going on inside of that house, and the parents managed to get away with this for a very long time. They're able to get away with their dark secret for many, many years. Now at number 1, we have a girl who was held captive for 24 years. This next story is a pretty famous case that emerged back in 2008. A woman named Elizabeth Fritzl, well, she told police that she had been captive for the past 24 years by her own father. Joseph Fritzl had assaulted, abused, and hurt her numerous times during her, imprisonment inside of her family basement. His abuse resulted in the birth of 7 children, where 3 of them remained in captivity with Elizabeth. One of them died shortly after birth, and Joseph disposed of his body in an incinerator, and the other 3 were brought up by him and his wife as their own. This secret went on for 24 years until finally the police discovered what was really going on. This story is so much more messed up, but I definitely don't want to get into all the horrific details. All I know is that Elizabeth is finally free, and I hope that one day she'll be able to move past this. I feel so bad.
Starting off this countdown, we have the ventriloquist doll. I don't know about you, but some dolls freak me out, like this one. This picture is the definition of creepy. Who said it was okay for that girl to bring her doll for the family photo? Or maybe that's their brother that got cursed and got transformed into a dummy. Or their brother wasn't available for the family photo, so they decided to make a lifelike doll of him, to take his place. Or the doll is haunted and is possessing their family. There's just too many options here, I swear, this is how dolls become haunted though. You start treating them like family, and next thing you know, a soul inhabits it. Didn't that happen to the famous haunted doll, Robert? Anyways, this picture would have been better off with just the girls and their little cat and dog. There was no need for the puppet doll as well.
In our number 9 spot today, we have San Pedro. Okay, if you haven't heard of the San Pedro prison in Bolivia, do I have a story for you. This prison was made famous when a British inmate began giving tours of the prison to tourists in the early 2000s, which sounds kind of insane, but this prison is unlike any other that I've ever heard of. This prison is essentially run by the inmates, and it functions like its own little society. It's absolutely wild. It's more like a hotel than what many would consider a traditional jail. Inmates actually have to purchase their own cell, to which they get a key, and there are like nicer 5-star cells for the rich, and sometimes they even renovate them to make them nicer, but there are also smaller, more crammed cells that house more than a couple inmates. So like some cells go for $30,000 while others are just a couple hundred. So while this all may seem like a lax, fun sort of monopoly prison system, there are actually some major flaws with deadly consequences. The city in which San Pedro is built, La Paz, sits at about 3,600 meters above sea level. It's one of the highest cities in the world, and this means that at night the temperature drops rapidly, and if you're left without a cell, you might just die of exposure, as have many prisoners throughout the years. Along with the cost of a cell itself, inmates also have to pay for food, clothing, and medicine, so they need to have jobs within the prison to pay for all of this. You might be sitting there wondering what this all has to do with families that chose to stay in unsettling places, and really it's because at San Pedro the government allows prisoners' wives and children to live with the inmates. I really did just say that. The children head off to school in the morning and return at night, and it is said that this is done so that the inmates don't lose contact with their families, and so that it can aid in their rehabilitation. The wives and children who reside at the prison are said to be treated with the utmost respect and are kept safe by all inmates, but despite that, it's of course an extremely controversial topic. In our number 8 spot today we have the Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression is a part of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia, and it is a geological depression that came about as a result of Africa and Asia moving apart. The divergence of 3 tectonic plates caused rifting and volcanic activity. This place is the hottest on Earth in terms of average year-round temperatures, and it is also one of the lowest places on Earth at 100 meters below sea level. There are active volcanoes in the area, there are salt springs, sulfur springs, and it only gets about 4 to 8 inches of rain every year. What I'm saying is that this place is stunning, and it has an incredibly rich geological history, but it isn't very hospitable. Despite that, there are people who call this place home. The Afar people have called this area home for many years, and of course that poses the question of how? Well, the biggest industry in the Danakil Depression is salt, and many of the people who live here will mine salt with their hands and then take a 2-day camel journey into the next town to sell it. The people who live here also have to deal with an average temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, but sometimes it gets as hot as 50 degrees Celsius. Somehow they have overcome the odds and the obstacles and managed to thrive in this extreme environment, and it is said that this was made possible over the centuries by their ability to adapt to need less food and water than other humans. Honestly, it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard. And on number 7 spot today we have the RAMSEY home. Okay, what would you say if someone told you that they bought the home where a horrific and one of the most prolific crimes of all time happened? And then what if I told you that they went to sell it years later but decided against it because they just loved the home so much? I mean, I get it, but I don't. You know? This is what happened when Timothy and Carol Schuller Milner bought the Jean-Benet Ramsey home in 2004 after it had sat vacant since the terrible crime happened in 1996. The 7,000 square foot home was built in 1926, and after their 2004 purchase, the couple tried listing and selling the home at a price point of $2.3 million in 2008, 2009, and again in 2011, and once again in 2014 at a lower price of $1.95 million. But surprisingly, no one wants to buy it. I wonder why. Now the home is unavailable for purchase, but not because it was snatched up by someone, but because Carol and Timothy turned down all the offers because they simply love the house so much. In our number 6 spot today we have La Rinconada. This town is located near the Peruvian Andes, very close to a gold mine, and is actually the highest permanent settlement in the world at 5,100 meters above sea level. Between 2001 and 2009, the population of this town increased greatly because the price of gold rose 235% during that time. Because of the elevation, the town has an alpine tundra climate and an average temperature of around 1 degree Celsius. The city has no running water or sewage, and the population of people who live here are working themselves to the bone in extremely dangerous mercury-filled mines. They're also working under some pretty horrible conditions where they work 25 days of the month for no pay at all, and then for 5 days of the month they can work for themselves and they are allowed to take as much ore as they can carry on their shoulders, but there is no guarantee that the ore will have any gold in it, and this is a terrible system, and it's why many of the town's residents live in extreme poverty. The town is a 6-hour bus ride from the nearest city on unpaved roads, and there isn't really a regular bus schedule, which makes it very difficult to get to. In our number 5 spot today we have the Yukon wilderness. Suzanne Crocker and her husband Gerard Parson packed up their lives along with their 3 children and set off to live for 9 months in a remote cabin in the Yukon Territory here in Canada. They lived with no running water, no electricity, no internet, and not even clocks or watches. They wanted to unplug in the most dramatic way possible. Suzanne said, quote, "To get the freedom of time again, we had to free ourselves from the structure of time and see what would happen." They actually made a film about this adventure called All the Time in the World, and it begins by showing their arrival to the cabin where they have to work for days in order to transport all their food. They have to haul it up a hill to the cabin, and then they have to build a food shed on stilts to prevent bears from reaching it. When the temperature temperatures plunged to minus 50 degrees Celsius and the nearby river froze solid, they described it as liberating, being able to skate, ski, and snowshoe freely. The coldest days they had a bit of cabin fever, but in the film, one of the children, Kate, makes a very beautiful point as to why, when the 8-year-old explains that, quote, "Inside is our storage place, but outside is actually our home." Half the days were spent preparing food, as quite literally everything needed to be made from scratch, of course, and all of this was only possible because both Suzanne and Gerard clearly had extensive knowledge of life in the wild. While this was certainly not an easy mission, there are definitely more unsettling places on this list, and as it turns out, this 9-month-long adventure turned out quite beautifully. In our number 4 spot today we have Volcanic Island. This is one that is very different from the others on this list, but it was just so incredibly interesting we have to talk about it. Back in 1965, Mano Tatao and 5 of his friends were studying at a boarding school in Tonga when they decided to do something quite rebellious, and that was to steal a traditional whaling boat and set off for Fiji. There are of course several flaws with this plan, but boys are boys, and they stole this engineless boat that had no map or compass, despite their destination being about 500 miles away. On the first night of this trip, a terrible storm ripped off the sails from the mast and tore off the boat's rudder, and for the next week the ship drifted aimlessly until the teens were able to struggle ashore to a volcanic island that they were able to spot. They were on the island of Ada and now had to learn how to survive. While many would expect some sort of Lord of the Flies situation, it was anything but that. The boys worked together to keep each other and themselves alive. Until they could build a fire, they ate raw fish. They would drink the blood and eggs of seabirds to keep their thirst quenched, and at one point they were able to find a clay pot, a machete, and some chickens that were left over from a small Tongan community that had lived here before. I could go on about this story forever, but in the end the boys lived quite harmoniously for 15 months while they were stranded on this island before they were rescued and brought back home, much to the astonishment of their families who had been grieving them for the last year. Despite how long it's been, many of the boys, who are of course now men, remain friends and sometimes even sail together. In our number 3 spot today we have the Versace Mansion. This place is an American property that was built in 1930 and is well known for being owned by Italian fashion designer Gianni Versace, as well as the place where Andrew Cunanan took Gianni's life. This 19,000 square foot Miami Beach home was bought by Gianni for $2.95 million in 1992, and in 1993 he also bought the adjoining Revere Hotel for $3.7 million, which he tore down to make the pool and garden area for his home. On July 15, 1997, Gianni was sadly shot by Andrew at the front of his home, and to this day, no one really knows why. Of course, when a tragedy occurs in a home like this one, it isn't exactly easy to sell after. In 2000, however, that all changed when Peter Lofton purchased the home for $19 million. Instead of using it for his own personal enjoyment, he decided to use the property as a boutique hotel, restaurant, and luxury event space. After that, in 2003, the mansion was bought by VM South Beach LLC for $41.5 million, and since then they have been using it as a luxury hotel with 10 unique suites. So yeah, not just one family is staying here, just a bunch of different rich ones are. In our number 2 spot today we have Centralia, Pennsylvania. This is a door to hell that is located in Pennsylvania underneath the cracked asphalt of one of the town's streets. Under these streets is an underground coal mine fire that was first set ablaze in 1962, and it just may continue burning for another couple hundred years, or maybe forever if it really is the entrance to hell. It is unknown exactly how the fire was first started, which is the topic of many arguments, but it quickly burned through all of the old networks of shafts and tunnels. After the fire started, sinkholes began to appear all over, and steam plumes, which were full of lethal amounts of carbon monoxide, began to rise from the ground. People started to compare what was going on underneath the city to what hell must be like, thus the door to hell name. Once 1984 rolled around, the government began urging people to leave the city and even claimed to help with the relocating costs, but as of 2013 there were 8 residents who refused to leave, and they ended up settling a lawsuit that included a $349,500 settlement and the right to reside in the town until the end of their lives. In our number 1 spot today we have the Dahmer home. Jeffrey Dahmer is of course one of the most terrifying and prolific serial killers ever, which is exactly why it doesn't come as a surprise that his home, the one where some of his very first crimes were carried out, was a bit of a tough sell. Yeah, Turns out most people don't want it. How strange. PETA was going to use the property to convert it into a vegan restaurant, but because of zoning issues, that never happened, so they needed to look for someone else to purchase the property instead, and that ended up being Chris Butler, the rock musician from Waitresses. According to Chris, when he first viewed the home, he had no idea the dark history behind it. He was really intrigued in it because it is surrounded by woods, and as a rock musician, looking for somewhere you can make as much noise as you want without bothering anybody is ideal, but when you think of a serial killer owning it prior, that thought immediately gives you the shivers. In the end, he says he went with the house because he really liked it, and it's not like it's the house's fault for the atrocities Jeffrey committed, which, I mean, is fair. He also doesn't believe in ghosts, so he doesn't worry on that front. According to him, the only thing he really worries about in the home is all the people stopping by who want a tour like they're entitled to it.